This episode is supported by Trustonomy, an original podcast from OneTrust. Every good relationship you have, personal or business, it involves trust. But we all know that trust doesn't just happen, right? We've all lost trust in a friend or a brand or a product. Trustonomy is a new podcast that looks at true stories from the past to understand how trust works and what makes it stronger and how to rebuild it when it's broken. Now, you know, I'm a sucker for a good podcast that weaves historical stories and relates it to what's happening today. So I thoroughly enjoyed this Trustonomy episode and recommend that you check that out as well. Search for Trustonomy in your podcast player. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Many thanks to the OneTrust team for their support.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. I'm Matt Goldman.
I'm Michael Saka.
And I'm Joelle Steiniger. Today we talked with Kate Matsudaira. She's going to be keynoting at the upcoming Future Insights conference in Las Vegas. What did you guys think?
This was really interesting. We talked a lot about being a good manager and being even a good employee, specifically at startups, but it was kind of universal. And so it was really interesting to hear the things that you could be doing to advance your career and planning for your career beyond just your day, your week, or your quarter. So what did you guys think?
Yeah, we also got a chance to talk about her Kickstarter project that she recently successfully launched. And it was interesting to hear about the logistics of it and how you go about producing thousands of products under a tight timeline.
Yeah, and actually for her keynote, Future Insights reached out and they gave all Rocketship listeners a discount code. So if you go to futureinsightslive.com and use the discount code Rocketship, you get 10% off tickets for this year's conference. It's June 1st in Las Vegas.
All right, let's get into it.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Hover makes purchasing and managing your domain simple and easy. This week, I talked to Max from Y Decision about how many domains he actually has as an account on Hover.
So right now, I manage 104 domains on Hover.
And those are all your own?
There's some of them are mine. Some of them are client domains that I manage. All in all, 104.
Wow. Go to hover.com and use the code SATISFIEDCustomers to get 10% off your domain purchase today.
Matt, tell me what comes to mind when you think about starting a new product.
Middleman, Git, Rails, Heroku, SSL, SSH, servers, clients, monitoring, logging.
Okay, wait. Hold on a sec. Like before all that tech stuff, like basic day one, how do you start to reach customers?
You just need a marketing site up. You need to start showing it to people.
Okay, so start from, sitting down in front of your computer. You've got this idea. You want to get the marketing site up. What do you do?
First things first, you need to find a great web host. You want a host who's reliable, been around a while, and is pretty well tested. A host that's easy to work with and ideally inexpensive. HostGator is a great option for this. They fit all those criteria, plus they're offering 30% off your first invoice for all Rocketship listeners. Definitely go check them out today, and don't let something as simple as hosting slow you down from reaching your first customers. Visit hostgator.com/promo/Rocketship to get your discount. You've heard me rave about CodeShip before. It's because they're an incredible team building an amazing product that makes my days happier and my code more reliable. Recently, they shipped an incredible new feature. It's called Parallel CI, and it allows for faster testing than ever before. Early access customers like Product Hunt have improved their development speed tremendously. If you haven't yet, tell your dev team to start a free trial. They have a super generous free plan, and they also offer 20% off 3 months to all Rocketship listeners. Sign up at codeship.com/Rocketship.
All right, so Kate, you will be keynoting at this year's Future Insights here in Vegas. Tell us a bit about what you're going to be talking about there.
My talk is all about taking charge of your career. So many of us have not so great managers, or maybe managers that are less experienced. And while it would be great if everyone just saw the work that we did and we were recognized for it, that's not really the reality of the way things work. And so, you actually care the most about your career. So I wanted to talk about, some tools and ideas to kind of help you take your career to the next level. So it covers everything from setting goals and working towards them, to things like how do you be more productive and use your time really efficiently in the office. So it's a lot of stuff in a short period of time.
Can you give us maybe a quick preview of one of the action items that you're going to be discussing?
Well, probably one of my favorite, and one that I talk to a lot of people about. I'll show you two. So the first one is, getting really deliberate about how you spend your time. If you talk to a lot of people in management roles or other successful people, they end up in a situation where they're just kind of doing email or going to meetings, and they might do some real work, but it's kind of haphazardly thrown in. Whereas I really talk to people about, getting really focused on what matters. Like, what are the skills they want to build? What are the most important things that they can be doing to help their company, versus just like doing whatever work, happens to be on the forefront of their mind, and like really carving out time to do that work. So blocking time on your calendar, or just getting really deliberate about it.
And do you find that, especially now as we have, I guess, smaller, in the startup world, there's a lot less organization than even in a big company. Do you find that employees need to be kind of taking on more of the responsibility of figuring out what needs to be done?
Yeah, I think there is, I think anytime you deal with really smart people working for you, so software engineers, designers, a lot of the people in startups are, just really smart people working for you. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to say in what they're doing. They want to have, they want to feel empowered. They want to feel included, right? All these things. So you really have to give them that opportunity. And that really implies that you're not just like listening to them and taking their opinion into account, but that you're also, leveraging that intelligence, right? Like if you have 100 people working for you, if each of those people is independently thinking and bringing their own set of ideas and stuff to the table, you're going to be way more successful than if you have one person dictating everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So how do you as a leader kind of keep things on track then? When you have, say, 100 people bringing you different ideas that may take the company in different directions, how do you keep everything kind of moving forward while allowing people their freedom?
I think there's a couple of really good techniques. So if you check out the book, Turn the Ship Around, there's also a great talk on it called Greatness, if you Google for that. It's by a submarine captain, but he talks a lot about how instead of telling people what to do, he really focused it on, letting people be in control of their domain, helping them know the intent and the clarity. So they would then communicate, I intend to do this. And instead of saying, and he would say, well, what is that? Is it safe? And just ask the clarifying questions and basically try to get everyone to think like a CEO and be the CEO of their own job.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on setting the vision and how that kind of affects some of those decisions?
I think it is really important to have a vision, or even company values, which it can influence hiring decisions and everything. But, having a clear, one of my favorite sayings is that success is a product of a lot of small decisions. And that can be the decisions made by your team. So think about all the little decisions they make every day. Do you build this feature with a whole bunch of tests to make sure that it never breaks? Or do you just get it out there quickly because we're not really sure if customers are going to use it or not yet? Or do you write a bunch of documentation on this process so that everyone understands it and can reference it? Or are you going to write that documentation and have it never be read? And the only way you can answer those questions and make those decisions is with a lot of information about your customers, information about your business goals, information about your revenue, information about how your team works together, how decisions are made, the process, all those things. So the more clarity and the more transparency and the more information you can give people, the better the more they'll understand the context in which they're making those decisions.
This episode is brought to you by Miro. Whether it's agile planning, scrum events, or technical diagramming, Miro is built for engineering workflows like yours. Enable your team to plan, align, and execute on your infrastructure initiatives all in one single place. That means you can plan your infrastructure efforts with intuitive project management and agile-focused features directly on a Miro board. Miro also has a ton of integrations like with Jira and Azure and Rally, so you can import tasks as native cards so you can see the big picture. Plus, Miro's estimation app gives you clear understanding of work scope and lets you identify gaps in analysis or understanding and set clear expectations for delivery, which is priceless. So, your first 3 Miro boards are free forever when you sign up. So go to Miro.com/podcast. That's Miro.com/podcast.
And I'm actually curious what your thoughts are. A big difference between companies that are really established, like a Microsoft or even companies that aren't quite that big, is that managers go through a lot of training and there's a lot of structure. But when you're working with startups, a lot of times they're founded by and managed by a lot of more inexperienced people that are experts in the actual product. And you grow so fast that you don't have that structure and that training. So do you see a trend in kind of different communication styles and skills that are needed with those kinds of organizations?
Yeah, I do. I think that, obviously, if you have great training, it'll help you in every aspect of your life. But if you're running a company and you don't have the training, or you're working in one of those companies, it's a really on you to kind of think through, if I'm working in a startup and I don't have a manager who's a great coach and who's giving me good feedback, if you want to grow in your career and you want to be more successful, it's your job to figure out how do you get that feedback, right? And if you are running a company and you aren't a great manager or you're a great coach, that's something that's almost always worth investing in. But I think it's also, important in how you hire, right? Like, I think one of the most critical things a startup can do is you need to hire people that can work without that management and direction. So sometimes that means hiring more senior people or people that you have really good relationships with already so that you can give them really blunt and straightforward feedback, right? You kind of see one of the two. Either you have, or like you have good mentoring in place if you're not the good coach, but you can't just hire people who need good management and then not offer them that, right?
Yeah.
So otherwise, it's just a recipe for disaster for your company and for their own careers and success.
So say you're one of those people working in a startup and you feel like you're not getting the direction you need or you're not growing. What kind of things can you do? Starting today, what can you go online and do?
Well, I don't necessarily even know if I would go online. I think I would start with having a conversation with my manager and making sure that the work I'm doing is aligning with the business goals. Because that's part of the problem a lot of the time is that you just kind of do work that you think is important, but it's not necessarily aligned. So I would start with like that kind of conversation and making sure that you have a really good relationship with your boss. Then what I might do is I would get really deliberate about where do I want my career to be in 5 years or 10 years, really visualize and say, where do you want to be living? What do you want to be doing? What is your life like? Are you married? Do you have kids? How much time are you spending at the office? How much money is in your bank account? Where are you going on vacation, right? Like answer all of those questions for yourself of what you want your life to be like, and then work backwards and say, okay, this is where I'm at now. What are the things I need to do between now and then to make that happen? Do you need, if you imagine that your job is like, you're not an engineer anymore, you're a manager. Well, you need to start like figuring out what that means. Like, how are you going to build your leadership skills? Are there those advancement opportunities in your job? Are you going to have to look for a new company? And I think just really getting deliberate about this is where I want to be. This is what I want my life to be like. And, this is how much money I want to be making. And like, if you're not, if you're just, maybe you are writing content or doing marketing and you really want to be an engineer and write code, like, maybe you do start looking online for classes. But I think that the trick is to know where you want to go and have a plan that you can execute on a little bit at a time, right? Because if you go back to that statement that I made, that success is a product of a lot of really small decisions. I always talk about like weight loss, right? Like you're not going to lose a pound if you're really good on a diet for 2 days, or versus like if you eat an extra cookie for 2 days, you probably won't gain a pound either. But if you skip the cookie and you eat a little bit healthier and maybe walk a little bit more every day for 3 months, will you lose weight? Probably, right? But it's those little decisions, the things that are easy to do, but also easy not to do. And so I think like that goes the same with your career, right? Like if you want to learn to program, like, yeah, you can do a week-long immersive or go to one of those code camps that are like 6 weeks, but you could also do a little bit every day or a few hours every week. And in the course of a year, you will have more than done that amount of time, right? So I think it's just being smart and really planning and making a lot of smart little decisions over a long period of time.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. For startup founders, a lot of times they don't have experience being managers, and it's their first time running a team, and they're growing the team under quick, sometimes unexpected conditions. What's your advice for them to learn how to be a manager when they've never done it before?
I would say the first thing I would do is hire someone who is a really great manager on my team. So I would try to get someone, because, you know, you can talk about having a mentor or whatever outside the organization, but that's not going to help you as much as having someone who can mentor you every day in and out of like as you're doing things. So if I was a founder and I'd never managed people and all of a sudden I found myself like my company was growing and I was doing really well, I would prioritize in one of my roles, and it doesn't have to be like technology or it doesn't have to be, you know, it can be marketing, it can be sales, it could be whatever. But hire someone who is a really good people manager, who has a track record of people managers, who has a lot of people who would love to work for them again, who has shown their ability to get promoted over and over within the same company, right? That's someone that you know is really smart. And get them on my team so I can really look and observe and see how they do things and get their feedback on how I'm doing things.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought to go that route, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you can get a coach or you can get training, and those are good things, but they're not. But a coach or training, it's like it's here and done, right? Like there's not, and they're not in the everyday with you. But if you can get someone on your team that will be, you're going to learn so much working closely with them.
Totally, and I mean, it comes back to people learn best by doing and being, in the trenches doing it, and so if you're aligned every day with someone doing it and you can see how they handle all the little things that come up that you wouldn't even think to ask about. It seems like an obvious move.
Yeah. And and the other thing is if you set up that relationship is like, hey, I'm hiring you because you're amazing at this skill and I want you to coach me. Like I want to learn from you. And you set it up like that from when you hire them and you make sure you're doing one-on-ones with them and working really closely with them. They're going to be open about giving you that feedback and it's going to make you better.
Absolutely. So I would love to kind of take a step back and talk about some of the other stuff that you've done. You recently did a successful Kickstarter on, with the Spark Notebook. I'd love to hear about how that experience was for you and what Kickstarter was like.
Yeah, no, that was definitely really interesting. I really had wanted to have this notebook. It was something I wanted to exist. And for people who aren't familiar with it, it's a cross between a planner and a notebook, which is how I used my notebook. I used it to take like meeting notes and notes with people while I was meeting, but I also used it for my to-do list and to kind of plan my week. Mm-hmm. And so I really created a planner that was like a planner in the front and notebook in the back. So I didn't have to carry two different things, or I didn't have a Moleskine that was like all marked up. I wanted something that was beautiful and something I would be proud to take into like a board meeting. So that was what I built. But I went to go get it printed. Like I had a designer kind of work with me on it, and I was just going to print it for myself because I just really wanted it, thinking like, oh, I'd have to pay $50 a notebook, like whatever, not a big deal. Well, I found out that like it's really not cost effective to do like just 500 or 1,000.
Yes.
Like you have to do many that like in order to make it like an affordable cost or something that makes sense. I had to print 1,000. I'm like, how am I going to print 1,000 notebooks, right? And so so that it ended up, so I was like, well, I'll try Kickstarter, right? And hopefully, and my goal was like, let me just get 1,000 notebooks so that I can print this one so I can have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only planning to do it once, and then the Kickstarter just took off. It was such a cool experience, but yeah, I learned a lot. I wrote some blogs about it that you can read, but I learned so much doing it, from like how hard shipping and logistics are for like physical goods and how expensive shipping is. Like I always thought shipping was so cheap because I have Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And so I just like, oh, it's free 2 days shipping.
Whatever.
Like I've never really thought about it. I was always like, oh, and so, but when I was like shipping a notebook and it costs like $5 or $6, like that's really substantial in the cost of a notebook.
Yeah. What did you do to promote the book? I mean, you had a goal of $14,000, and that would have gotten 1,000 books printed.
Yeah.
But you raised $138,000 for this. What were you doing to promote this, to get it to that level?
There was a couple things that we did that I think was really smart. Well, one is, so I have a popular blog, and I get a lot of traffic. So obviously I used my existing, and I have a lot of Twitter followers. Well, I mean, relatively a lot for what I think is a lot, but I know there are people with hundreds of thousands, but nothing like that. But, I have a following, like a people that I can reach out to. So, I used my network. So that was like the first thing. And I also emailed on the very day it launched it, every single person in my contact list, which was like a lot of people. So because I was kind of like, well, like a blanket email. So that was one thing I did. And then after that, a lot of it was word of mouth. A lot of it was also, I think the Kickstarter page was really compelling. I did some cross promotion with other Kickstarter people who were running campaigns at the same time, and that tended to do really well.
Okay.
And then the rest, I mean, we tried actually doing Facebook ads, but we spent like $700, and as far as we can tell, it drove like 3 sales. So like we quit doing that like right away. I'll just tell you like what worked, what didn't. And but social media worked really well. So we had, if you read the Kickstarter page where we were giving away free layouts, like a handful of the things is like a PDF, like the designs in the notebook. And that really started people's social sharing. So we actually had Twitter was like our number one driver, more than anything else, to our Kickstarters, into Kickstarter sales. So that was like really unusual according to other people who run Kickstarters. But we really, with people sharing it on social to get the free layouts and stuff, it really helped us, like just building that word of mouth and kind of like incentive to share. So that was probably the biggest thing that we did that made a difference.
Do you know which kind of community
out of my
jumped
Kickstarter?
on?
Oh, actually, we could have sold a lot more, but we ran out of inventory with a week left in our campaign.
Oh, so you already had it ready to print when you started the campaign?
No. Well, I really wanted, it was like bad planning on my part. We really wanted the notebooks to ship in January. So in order for that to happen, after the first week of Kickstarter, we had to go to print. So that meant that I had to establish the quantity after the Kickstarter been going a week. So I kind of like projected what I thought. So it was like, oh, we can probably print 5,000. So I felt really confident about that, the way we were growing, because we were at 50,000. So I was like, okay, I can print this and I can afford to pay for it or whatever. But then what happened was we sold that. Then it started picking up, and we sold that. Once we sold the 5,000, we didn't have any more to sell. So I capped the amount that we could have earned. So we probably could have done a lot more.
Interesting.
But I didn't want to keep but it was too much risk, right, for me to print more, and I had to pay all that money up front. Like with Kickstarter, you think you get the money right away, but you don't get it till after your campaign ends, and then they spend a week charging people and like retrying cards and stuff, and then it takes like they do that for 2 weeks, I guess, and then it takes another week to get your money. So it's actually like 3 weeks after the campaign closes, which is a little bit crazy, and I didn't realize that, and I didn't plan for that.
Yeah. So can you buy these now, or is this kind of a one-off thing that you did?
Well, since we had so much demand, we decided we were going to print another print run in June. Okay. So yeah, you can, if you want yours in June, you'd have to buy it really soon. But we probably will sell that. We're probably going to print some extra and sell them after the fact.
So for those that haven't done a Kickstarter, I mean, you raised 138,000. Would you say it's worth it, or is it kind of a like fun hobby to do, or could you make this a business?
I think it could be a business. I think, it's definitely a great side project. I mean, I'm really proud of it. I keep promoting it and want it to grow, and I plan to keep printing the notebooks because once, with these notebooks, it's like once it's designed, you kind of print the same things over and over. Although we're adding like meeting notes, we're adding some new like products too. So it is sort of turning into a business.
Okay.
But it was definitely, I would encourage anyone who has an idea to do a Kickstarter. Although I should also tell people that it needs to be a pretty serious idea, and you need to be willing to put your money behind it unless you're a good designer and videographer, because having a great video and great product photos like make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so if you're not good at like photography or video and you want to do a Kickstarter, I would encourage you to like budget, $5,000 at least to pay someone to do that for you. Okay. So if you're not willing to put $5,000 down yourself, or you can't, to kind of like bet on your campaign, Kickstarter may not be the best option.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you can get someone to do it for you for free or for a percentage or something, which I know some people will do.
Interesting.
Or you can find it cheaper. People are scrappy.
But no, you're right. I mean, there's so much competition even on Kickstarter that you got to stand out. Well, that's
great.
And
it's marketing, right? Like people watch the videos, people look at the products, and they want to know that you're credible, that if they give you money, that you're going to deliver what you say you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's been a big problem. I feel like Indiegogo is now getting the bulk of the bad press on that side, but I know Kickstarter had their problems for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think Indiegogo has a little bit more, like they're like, you get the money even if you don't raise the full amount.
Right.
Right. So it's like, if you say, I need $15,000 to print 1,000 notebooks and I didn't raise it, well, it's possible I still might be able to raise it, but I also might not, right?
Right. You might not just print the notebooks, but you can keep the 14. Yeah.
Yeah, which is sort of like not necessarily good. I mean, imagine there's some backlash, but how would you know?
Yeah. You really don't. I know the Heel Bee was a big one for Indiegogo, where they raised a couple million on like a health device, and there really was never going to be a health device.
I never heard about that.
Yeah, it was.
Me either.
The team was in. Oh, I'm going to say Russia. I don't know though. But they were really hard to get a hold of, and I think Pando finally got them on Skype, and they showed them this really janky mock-up of it, and it became very clear before the campaign even ended that there was never going to be a device because it was literally impossible to build. And they raised a couple million. People started pulling their money out, but it was a big press, kind of backlash for Indiegogo.
Did they get to keep them? Did they keep the money?
Yeah. And that's as far as I heard. They kind of walked, and they just kept promising it's coming, and hoping that it eventually died down, I think.
Well, I think that your credit cards have some consumer protection. So maybe I would advise people, if you're going to sponsor Kickstarters, use a good credit card that will give you a refund for your money. Like, that would be my advice. Like, don't use a debit card, which you don't have that.
Totally. So you are going to be at Future Insights here in Las Vegas. I say here because I'm in Las Vegas, but in Las Vegas, I think it's June 1st through the 4th.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Well, where else can we keep up with you online?
Yeah, well, you can check out my notebook at thesparknotebook.com, and I have a personal blog at katematz.com.
And Twitter? Twitter
is Kate Matz.
Cool. And we'll link to all of that so they can go follow you. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
And say hi.
Yes, definitely.
Like, don't just follow me. Like, send me a note, because that way I'll know who you are.
And we'll see you. We'll be at Future Insights, so we'll see you there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Rocketship podcast. If you enjoyed it, we have tons of other awesome episodes on our website. Check them out, rocketship.fm.
And make sure to check out our app discount section, where we feature discounts from amazing companies like Treehouse, Wistia, Woo Themes, all giving you exclusive discounts for being a Rocketship listener. So go to rocketship.fm/essentials.
Most of us are heaving through corrupted lungs, setting fire to our insides for fun, collecting names of the lovers that went wrong, the lovers that went wrong.
I'm Dr. Ray Wingrant, wildlife ecologist and host of the award-winning podcast Going Wild, produced by Nature on PBS. In the brand new season of Going Wild, we're tackling the big question, how can humans look at our relationship to nature differently? And with the help of special guests like Christian Cooper, host of Nat Geo's Extraordinary Birder, and Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, co-creator of the How to Save a Planet podcast. Follow Going Wild with Dr. Ray Wingrant on your favorite podcast app.
Are you looking for a podcast that'll make you laugh?
You came to the wrong place.
That's not us.
That's not us.
Well, it is. We are a husband and wife who chat about raw, real relationship topics.
Like sex.
Like money.
Like marriage and kids.
But we're not afraid to talk about how your newborn baby probably isn't as cute as you think it is.
If you're in need of entertainment while you're driving to work, because that sucks, we can join you in the suckage, kind of like being in your ear.
Not physically.
So if you want to laugh,
come check us out.
Brought to you by the Laughing Couple Podcast.